Hello and welcome back to my channel. And if you're new, then welcome. I'm Jess Cannell, and I would love to earn your subscription today. Well, we have done 3 so far of these Quips and Queries episodes, basically where I share your comments and responses to videos and talk through anything that's been shared that's of interest, that could be of interest to the entire community. And so this is the 4th one of those. And we're just going to walk through some of the comments you guys have left since that last Quips and Queries episode and talk through them together. The first thing that was mentioned was from a person named M.M. Thomas, who wrote me an email and said he wanted to share 2 thoughts, or she. I don't know who M.M. Thomas is. The first one was about Forgive My Grief by Penn Jones. We have talked about this book a lot. I actually have volumes 1 through 3. This is volume 1. It is Forgive My Grief, and it is by a man named Penn Jones who published these books. And it was all about testimonies, questions and answers, witnesses who were not brought before the committee, unexpected deaths, all sorts of things are chronicled in these Forgive My Grief books. He or she notes that all 4 volumes are available at no cost online at archive.org. I will put the link in the show notes. I just thought you would find it helpful and interesting. If you are interested in reading these books, you can find them for free online. The second thing is that he said, I don't know if you're aware of Josiah Thompson's life as an academic. He is an impressive man, part adventurer and part scholar. He has a PhD from Yale in philosophy. And he has 2 or 3 books on Kierkegaard. So I did not know that. I didn't know anything about Josiah Thompson, apart from the fact that his nickname is Tink. He is a longtime researcher. He is still alive, and he wrote 6 Seconds in Dallas. So that was interesting to me, and I thought might be interesting to you as well. The next one is a comment from Pagan Maestro, who says, no way Oswald killed Tippett. And please, good people, avoid Posner's book. It's establishment propaganda. So I mentioned offhand in the Tippett episode that perhaps at some point we will read through some portions of Case Closed by Posner. We might. And if that makes you want to turn off my channel, then you could turn it off. From the beginning, I have said that I am open to learning and I am open to reading. And while I don't perceive that I would agree with Mr. Posner in any way, I am not at all opposed or scared to open up that book and interact with it. In fact, we very well might do so at some future point. It's not on the plan. It's not on the agenda tomorrow or anything, but it could be very good for anyone, I think, who leans toward the conspiracy or Warren Commission critic perspective to make sure that you have looked at the positive arguments for why it could have been Lee Oswald as a lone gunman. Do I believe that? No. But I am definitely open to familiarizing myself with those arguments so that I can be better sharpened for what I do perceive is the truth. So my response was, I hear you. I didn't say we would read 20 times from it. We may choose a bit and interact with the text. It doesn't mean we'll turn our brains off. So with anything we read here, we're not going to turn off our brains. We are not going to just buy one thing and stick with it. The next thing I wanted to share with you is actually a statement by Anna Paulina Luna that said that she believes that there needs to be a new government statement that collates the facts that we know now in 2025 and repudiates the findings of the Warren Commission, that there needs to be an official government statement that actually acknowledges what's true. There's also movement. In fact, if I can find it, I'll put the link in the show notes. There is movement to appeal to NBC to release footage of a video that purportedly may show Lee Oswald just moments after the assassination. much sooner than what people thought was possible. And so that is something that you may wish to sign and that you definitely want to know about. So I wanted to make sure that you have that available. The next comment that we have, this was actually a response to our last Quips and Queries episode. Days in Europa 27 wrote, "Hi Jess, I think the first time I got into the JFK assassination was in 1993 when I watched a documentary called As It Happened, The Killing of Kennedy. I was amazed by the size of the cover-up and I went on to read a book about it. You have reignited my interest in JFK, so I reread the Mark Lane book, Rush to Judgment. One thing that really struck me was that he stated that the Warren Commission calculated the time between the first and second shots was 1.8 seconds. And the Mannlicher Carcano rifle they found needed 2.4 seconds between shots minimum. So this should undermine their whole case." Yes, absolutely correct. It made me really glad to read about your rekindled interest. I think, it's an honorable aim to understand the truth in a greater and greater degree. And it doesn't mean we have to devote every minute of our waking day to the quest for truth in the JFK assassination. But I do think that it is a commitment to the good of our nation to understand what's true here and to do your own digging. In fact, all of the true things that have been discovered and added to our knowledge have been done by people doing that very thing. Private citizens who are essentially engaging in the journalism that our journalists, our political class, our Chief Justice, our commissions, our congressional committees were all unwilling to do. So it's an honorable aim, and I'm glad you've taken it back up. Joni Bowen asked, "Have you heard the interview of James Files?" Yes, I have. And my response to that is, rather than me making a whole video about it, I think that anyone who's interested in James Files should go watch Ted Yakuchi's videos about that very thing. In fact, the more that James Files keeps talking, I don't know if you even are aware of this, there's a very old 90s era video of James Files where he's first talking about the JFK assassination. Then there's a relatively new updated version that maybe was done 2010, give or take 5 or 8 years. So 20 years later. And then lately on a channel here on YouTube, he has given a series of interviews where it seems like he's claiming to be a part of everything that ever touched the Kennedys almost. He even puts himself in the middle of Chappaquiddick. And I will tell you from my deep dive into Leo D'Amour's book, which is the best book about Chappaquiddick, the most researched and excellent book. Even that one incident, I listened to some of James' files, and the claims he makes do not even match the forensic evidence of what happened in Chappaquiddick. So he is a fantastic storyteller. He can really tell a tale that draws people in, but he is not credible, and he does not deserve another look. But Ted Yakuchi has made some excellent videos that are responses to the various claims of James Files. And so rather than me reinventing the wheel, I'm just going to point you there. Watch his videos, learn from what he says. That will give you all you need to know about James Files. The next one is from Timing the J.D. Tippit Murder. Christopher Marks wrote, "President Kennedy was murdered once and in only one way. So if there are 10 conspiracy theories out there, 9 of them are equine excrement. And none of them put a dent in the mountain of physical and forensic evidence laid out in exhaustive detail by the Warren Commission. A video like this one, although presented by a nice enough lady, is nothing more than a 37-minute workout on the conspiracy hamster wheel. It is sad to see so many people have launched themselves down this rabbit hole over the decades. Do yourselves a favor. Read Case Closed by Gerald Posner." My response was, "How benevolent you are to save the world from this 37-minute hamster wheel. Or perhaps there's something here worth hearing that free people in a free nation that have never believed the pile of excrement they were served up on September 24th, 1964, might benefit from hearing. I'm so thankful a free society allows each viewer and citizen to make up their own minds. One of the things that is ironic about his description of the mountain of physical evidence laid out in exhaustive detail by the Warren Commission is that that mountain includes things like Jack Ruby's mother's dental records, which bear no bearing at all on the case. Mark Lane made the joke, even if Jack Ruby had bitten Lee Oswald to death, her dental records would have no bearing on the case. But yet the Warren Commission included that, and yet they did not ask for evidence from many, many, many eyewitnesses. And, you know, one of the things that Gary Aguilar, I think it's Aguilar, said about that is if there were various errors in the Warren Commission and they tended in all different directions, there were some excellent witnesses for the guilt of Lee Oswald that weren't called, and there were excellent witnesses against the Oswald and Oswald alone case that weren't called. Then you could say, well, the mistakes tended in all directions, and therefore they were honest mistakes. But when all of the errors tend in one direction, it gives you a clear picture that something was being avoided, that the truth was being avoided, that particular perspectives that pointed toward guilt were highly sought after and prioritized, and any witnesses that bore a story that was contrary to that were quieted or disinvited, or their testimonies while they were being given were steered away from any kind of smoking gun evidence. So this idea of a mountain of physical and forensic evidence that just can't be overcome, as the Warren Commission, is a false picture. Not true at all. It is indeed a voluminous pile of something in the 26 volumes, and yet it is not a robust case for the guilt of Lee Oswald. The next one is, my name is Gary Carter, and I'm a subscriber to your fascinating YouTube channel. I've just watched a video of an interview with Clint Hill. The interview was filmed 3 years ago. As we know, he passed away earlier this year. Hill was riding on the running board of the car behind Kennedy's as it drove through Dealey Plaza that day. He states without any hesitation that the fatal bullet blew out Kennedy's head toward the rear. What is even stranger is that no one picks this up in the comments. Perhaps, Jess, you might want to view this for yourself. Perhaps something you could use in a future video. Many thanks for your time. Thank you, Gary C. Yes, that is true. People like Clint Hill and others readily admitted the head wound as being back here, which of course is different than what the Warren Commission asserts, that a bullet went in here, came out up here, and blew off the top part of the cranium. Instead, he and others all put it back at the parietal occipital region, which is right back here, basically centered behind the point of the ear, is kind of where you can picture it. That's what Clint Hill points to, as well as all the other eyewitnesses who saw the president's head between Dealey Plaza and when it was put into the coffin at Parkland. The next comment from M.H. Balka says, Jess, I've really been enjoying your content. I grew up in Dallas, where both my parents actually saw JFK in downtown the day he was assassinated. My dad even saved a Dallas newspaper from November 23rd, 1963. In 9th grade, I interviewed people for a history project on where they were when JFK was shot. One man, Lyle Noah, a Parkland Hospital ambulance driver and member of my church, told me he arrived at Parkland right after the presidential limousine. He said he knew the shots came from the front because the back of the car was covered in blood and brain matter. Hearing that sparked my lifelong curiosity about the case. Hopefully one day the government will change its official stance on the assassination. Indeed, the spray pattern is entirely back and to the left, directly in line with the headshot going out that direction. It went all over Bobby Hargis. The piece of the skull flies backward. Jackie climbs onto the back and grabs the piece of brain. That is the spray pattern. And it's interesting. This man, Lyle Noah, that went to church with this commenter, said the same. Very fascinating. Thank you for sharing. I really love hearing firsthand accounts like this. Andrew Gillis actually responded to that message and said, stunning. The photo of the empty limo rear seat proves the accuracy of Mr. Noah's recall. Worst of all, most obvious to me, is JFK's shirt. The shirt is soaked with blood from the very top of the left shoulder at the seam and down its back. No blood elsewhere on the shirt, only in this quadrant of fabric. I would argue that this eliminates as impossible a bullet entering from above and to the right and to the rear, leaving us with the improbable, a patsy employed in that building, albeit not even at the window. I'm following the advice of Arthur Conan Doyle, that the bullet could not have entered here and have all the blood go back this way. That doesn't make sense. Instead, it is far more likely that the trajectory was through here, out here, and went back into the left. Skip Tickle wrote, how do you even know that Ruby shot Oswald? Eye roll. Perhaps there was a second shooter behind white concrete pillar. Remember, never believe the truth. Everything is always a conspiracy. I said, nonsense. And thank you for providing us with a great example of how to interact uncharitably in a disagreement by assuming the most absurd position about the other person. The problem with Warren Commission believers that come to this channel is this. They do not engage in good faith disagreement. Instead, they use words that are demeaning toward anyone who doesn't believe the Warren Commission. They accuse, like this, of never believe the truth. Everything is always a conspiracy. Believe you me, there are a great many more conspiracy paths that we could go down if we wished to. My goal is not to take you down every possible rabbit trail. I mean, even my comments about James Files just a few moments ago should show you that. My goal is not just to open my brain and accept any conspiracy that might present itself. Instead, we need to evaluate each path with discretion and discernment. And we do that with people like James Files. We do that with any potential for conspiracy. Moving on to the Robert Groden response about the Zapruder film, when he and I talked through that the Zapruder film has not been altered, and he gave his reasons for that belief. Peter wrote, respectfully, this is misinformation. Of course it's been altered. Read through the comments and you can see which labs altered it, like Hawkeye, etc. On a personal level, I met Jackie Kennedy in the 1970s. I shook her hand and looked in her eyes. She had the most shell-shocked eyes I've ever seen in my life, and I work in mental health. I'll never forget them. It's a disservice to Jackie Kennedy and their entire family to continue to misrepresent the facts. At this point, it's immoral, in my opinion. Why? For me, Jackie Kennedy is a real person, and her husband was shockingly murdered right next to her. So anyone who changes or misuses the facts is adding to the trauma of what happened and disrespecting her in an immoral way. She was also a victim that day, and obviously their whole family. Honoring them would be telling the transparent truth. Well, we can agree on the last sentence for sure, that honoring them would be telling the transparent truth. And I agree that she was a real person and she was a victim. But my response was this: respectfully, you are the one misusing authority here. Meeting Jackie Kennedy, yay you, cool opportunity for sure. Or working in mental health. which gives valid insights and validity to the diagnoses that you give to your clients, for sure. These things do not give you the authority to speak about how film works. That should be obvious. But having met Jackie Kennedy, having shaken her hand, having worked in mental health, doesn't give a person credence on whether or not 1963 film has been or could have been altered. Now, I will say, for my part, it may or may not have been. I don't have the authority or full understanding yet to say with absolute certainty what happened in a technical manner with the film itself and the copies made of it. But with a history in mental health and a time when you met Jackie, but also no experience working with film in the 1960s, I believe the same is true of you. In my estimation, you also likely don't have the authority or full understanding of the facts that would be necessary about film duplication, splicing, how the various emulsion sides work, and all of that to say with absolute confidence what happened with a technical film in the 1960s, nor the copies made of it. But I do think it's very, very neat that you got to meet Jackie. And we can agree that she was a woman highly traumatized, victim of her circumstances, absolutely. And we absolutely agree that telling the truth is what honors her. And that is the ambition of this channel. I would encourage this commenter and anyone else not to use a fact like having met Jackie or having some sort of personal connection to mental health or some other thing to emotionally exploit others to make a random point in your favor in this case. That's dishonest. Now, if I had gotten on my video and said, you know what, Jackie wasn't traumatized, that's ridiculous. And he wanted to come and say, look, Jess, I actually shook her hand. She was the most traumatic soul that I have ever encountered. And you don't understand mental health. I have worked with X number of patients. You don't understand what you're talking about. And I'm going to bring a stern correction. And to that would be a valid use of having met Jackie and having a history in mental health. Critiquing whether or not a person who has actually handled the film of the Zapruder film is telling the truth about his experiences, the two don't relate to one another. Like there's zero correlation between having shaken her hand and whether or not you can make an accurate determination as to whether or not a piece of film that's this big has been spliced together in secret vaults somewhere. You can't make that assessment and I can't make that assessment. Robert Groden was telling us in that video why he has made the assessment he has. And then it's up to us to determine what we're going to do with that. But, you know, this is a false appeal to authority that's not even an accurate type of authority that we should appeal to in this sort of decision. So that's my response to that. Well, Andrew Gillis wrote, picking up directly from this, I would argue it this way. Hundreds of Dallas witnesses and doctor statements on a wide variety of topics would be rendered truthful or not mistaken were this crime found to be a coup d'etat inside job. Requiring an honest and proper investigation, of course, which the USA doesn't have and deserves. Meanwhile, a much smaller number of statements supporting the guilt of a lone shooter would be shown to be mistaken. Or, in the case of Emory Roberts, Bill Greer, Thomas Kelly, and LBJ, potentially sinister. But notice their statements have no wild variety of topics. They're all about JFK as a sitting duck. Consistent, not with these being truth, but with them being a narrative imagined or even shared ahead of time. His point is a valid one, that we have a wide variety of individuals on this side with no intent or bias. They didn't show up to Dealey Plaza that day expecting to have their statements be read, expecting anything other than to wave to their president. That's what they came ready to do. And from all angles in the plaza and from all angles around the body in Parkland, we get their eyewitness accounts. And their eyewitness accounts essentially all add up to a huge quantity of people whose eyewitness accounts do not match a lone gunman. And then we have a much smaller number of people, many of whom were in positions of power or directly affected by the assassination, in that they got greater amounts of power afterwards. And they are the ones whose statements support, well, he put himself in that position. So yes, this is a thought worth pondering. Finally, I did want to point you toward the article that Vince Palomera shared in his interview. It's from the Idaho State Journal, and it's an insightful one. It's about a woman named Jackie Alvord, who says that she was a good friend of Secret Service agent Lawton. If you watched that video, you remember, because I showed it multiple times during that interview, there is a video where Emory Roberts goes like this, pulls back the agents that were about to go and run beside and get onto the presidential limo. And you can't see the one on the left, but Lawton on the right, he does this with his hands multiple times. Like, what? What's the deal? And her comment here in this article says something else was bothering Lawton. She says, I knew he felt guilt. That's why he kept saying, I should have been there. I should have been there. It wasn't until later that Alvord realized the significance of Lawton's statements. She watched the documentary film 4 Days in November and saw Lawton at Love Field in Dallas as the president's motorcade was preparing to depart. He was running alongside the rear of the car with his hand behind the president. It was a position he had mastered before jumping aboard the platform at the rear of the limousine. It was something he had done in Florida and Chicago during presidential parades earlier in 1963. This article, which was published in 2013 on the 50th anniversary, she goes on, she says, suddenly someone pulled Lawton away from the car. The motorcade proceeded without him or any agent manning the rear platform on the president's limousine. To this day, it's a mystery to Alvord and others why there were no Secret Service agents on the back of that limo. Now, it wasn't a mystery to Lawton, who is looking at the person who's ordering him off and doing like this, like, what? Why? Hello? So that article is an important one. It's a personal friend of Lawton who is attesting to the very same thing and explaining his reaction that we see in that video. So I loved that conversation with Vince Palomera. I hope you did too. He is a fast talker. I had many of you leave that comment. You're welcome to slow that interview down to 75% speed if it's difficult for you to follow his speaking. Someone else pointed out, they said, I'm from Philadelphia also, and they said the faster or the more excited we get, the faster we talk. And I totally thought that's what was happening. And I could tell that's what was happening in our discussion, that he is so on the money. He's so excited to share information. He's so invested in the case that he brings it full force to us. And I love that passion. Honestly, I loved our conversation. I was so grateful that he came onto the channel and shared his expertise about the Secret Service with us. So I want to point you all to that story as something that if you missed it, you definitely want to go back to. And then finally, I wanted to let you guys know about JFK Historical. That is the conference where I will actually be sharing on the Thursday. And they have made a discount code for that, where there are packages just for 1 day packages that you can get, or packages for one speaker that you can get. So if you wish to do either of those are available to you for JFK Historical. And then also I will be present at Lancer, and there is a 10% discount code for that called JFK 10. So you can tell that to them with whatever package you desire, and they'll take 10% off of that cost for you. So I hope you enjoyed this Quips and Queries episode. I like bringing various critiques and comments and insights to you guys, as well as additional resources like that article about Secret Service agent Lawton. So Let me know what comments and questions you have about any of this, and we'll continue moving forward just throughout this series of JFK Circling the Truth. We're going to keep these comments so that the conversation between you and I can continue in this manner. So I hope you have a great day. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.